This is Glenn Healy.
Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
This is Daryl Sutter.
Hi, this is Brian Burke.
This is Jordan Tutu.
This is Keith Morrison.
This is Kelly Rudy.
Hi, this is Scott Hartnell.
Hey everybody, my name is Steele Fleury.
This is Tim McAuliffe of Sportsnet, and you're listening to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend, enjoying the nice weather while it lasts. I know nobody wants to talk about snow. I certainly don't, but if we get a few more days like that in October, the more days we get, the happier I am, because we all know that means hopefully a shorter winter. But man, beautiful, beautiful days on the weekend. Got the kids out, enjoyed some of the sun, and just a nice weather. So I hope wherever you were at, you got to do the same. Now, let's get on to today's episode sponsors. Carly Kloss and the team over at Windsor Plywood, builders of the podcast studio table for everything wood. These are the guys. I was doing a little creeping on their Instagram, and I saw they have countertops in, and they look pretty sharp. I can't even. One of them's Malaysian oak. How's that? I say go to their Instagram, their social media, and check out what I'm seeing. Pretty sharp. As you know, when I do get guests in the studio, everybody always remarks on the table because it is fantastic, and it's a river, a river table made of 2 slabs of wood. Geez, that was hard to get out of my mouth. And it is just sharp, and that is the team over at Windsor Plywood. So if you're looking about mantles, or you're talking about decks, mantles, windows, doors, sheds, just stop over, see Carly and the team at Windsor Plywood, or give them a call, 780-875-9663. Jen Gilbert and the team for over 45 years, since 1976, the dedicated realtors of Coldwell Banker Cityside Realty have served Lloydminster and the surrounding area. Star Power is what they're providing you with 7-day-a-week access, because they know big life decisions are not made during office hours. Just give them a call. Coldwell Banker, Cityside Realty, for everything real estate, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 780-875-3343. And if you're buying or renewing or whatever you got on the go, maybe mortgage broker Jill Fisher can help you out there as well. Obviously, her name says it all. She proudly serves the areas of Lloydminster, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, and Vermilion, and she's looking forward to working with you for all your mortgage needs. She, obviously, with the rates kind of, I mean, I've been talking about this now for like a year, maybe longer. The rates are exceptional. They have been lower in the last little bit. They have come up a bit, not much. But don't listen to me, kind of muddle through it. Give her a call. Stop in her website, jfisher.ca, or give her a call, 780-872-2914. If you are buying a house or renewing your mortgage, that's a way you could probably save some money or get a really, really good rate, is through mortgage broker Jill Fisher, all right? Clay Smiley and the team over at Prophet River. I did get a tour of their building a couple weeks back. The new one, if you're around the Lloydminster area, or you've done a little bit of partying in your day, the old Buckle or the Tier Lounge when it was open, they've both been being converted into the new Prophet River, and it is going to be sharp. Let me tell you, I'm looking forward to when they hopefully open, maybe closer to December, maybe January, depending on how things go over the next little bit. It is a sharp-looking spot, going to be a lot more accessible, open, compared to where they are currently. Of course, they specialize in importing firearms from the United States of America. They take pride in making the process as easy as possible for all their customers. That means all that crappy paperwork you don't want to do, yeah, they take care of all of it. Just go to profitriver.com and check them out today. They are the major retailer of firearms, optics, and accessories, serving all of Canada. Trophy Gallery, downtown Lloydminster, is Canada's supplier for glass and crystal awards. I got them making me another set of SNP mugs, because they were fantastic. I suggest, if you're looking for something to put your company logo on, and you're like, yeah, like I need something to sip a little coffee in the morning, or I need something to give out to some clients, etc. Awards with sports kicking off here and getting rolling. Obviously, get into Trophy Gallery, go online, see what they can do for awards for you. On the company side, I say take a look at some of their travel mugs, because they are sharp. It's been a hit with the SNP folks, that is for sure. And if you want to see some ideas, go to trophygallery.ca. They got all sizes, all shapes, all price ranges. Of course, they're downtown Lloydminster, and they are Canada's award store. Go to trophygallery.ca, right? SNP Billboard, if you're looking for some outdoor signage, I always bring it up. It's across. I had 222 minutes bugging me earlier today. He was looking for it. It's close to the airport if you're looking. If you are for your company or business, want some outdoor signage, I highly suggest Read and Write, the team over there. Go bug Mrs. Deanna Wandler. All kind of things, hopefully. Or give her a call, 306-825-5111. They can get you hooked up and make your company look sharp, all right? Gartner Management is a Lloydminster-based company specializing in all types of rental properties to help meet your needs. Whether you're looking for a small office or a 6,000 square foot commercial space, give Wade Gartner a call, 780-808-5025, all right? And if you're heading into any of these businesses, let them know you heard about them from me, okay? Now, let's get on to that T-Bar 1 tale of the tape. An active hypnotist who helps release what's holding them back. I'm talking about Jason Andrews. So buckle up. Here we go.
This is Jason Andrews. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Well, welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Jason Andrews. So first off, sir, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, I got to get a little background on you. I think the audience would love a little background on you as well. Just maybe a little bit about yourself. And I mean, before we started, you were mentioning the journey into becoming a hypnotist. Lay it on us.
Yeah, it's been an interesting path for me. So it started when I was in high school, and there was this religious group that got a hold of myself and a couple hundred other high schoolers, right, at my high school, and did a ton of religious programming. So this was, looking back, this was good for actually some of the kids. But for me, it was not good. For me, it was really bad. It put a lot of things in my head that really just didn't work for me. So from age 16 to about 25, I was a wreck. I was on all kinds of, every antidepressant available. I went through all of them, anxiety disorders, panic attacks, all that stuff, right? Because of this just extreme religious programming that had been put in my head at that age. And what happened was around age, I don't know, how old was I? 22 or 23, I found this funny book called Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, right? The interesting thing about that book was that I noticed that the things that he was talking about in that book were about as strong as some of the things in my head that I didn't want there anymore. Right? Does that make sense? It was the first time I realized, now, wait a minute, these things that I don't want in my head, this stuff in this book seems to be able to go toe to toe with those things that I didn't want and kind of, change them when nothing else was working. So I started looking into it, and I discovered this funny little discipline called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And this was in the early days. I was on this Yahoo message board, right? This is 20 years ago. It's like cutting edge Yahoo message boards. And I was talking about some of this stuff, and there was a guy on there, and he said, he wrote to me, he's like, I know what you're trying to do, but you're not doing it right. He says, give me a call, and I'll show you how to do this. And I was like, all right. So I give this guy a call, and he just tells me stories for an hour. I thought we were going to be like talking. No, he just told me stories. I barely got a word in. Told me stories for about an hour. And the only thing I remember about the story is at the end of the story, this giant hog got put on an altar and slaughtered. That's the only thing I remember about this whole hour of stories. And the result was all the anxiety went away. Bam. I mean, it was gone. Permanently gone. from this 1 hour, this guy telling me stories. At that point, I started going off the medications and have had nothing, taken nothing since. It was one of those experiences that was so mind blowing to me. I thought I have to get in on this. This is something I have to learn more about. Because for 9 years, my brain had just been, hijacked and taken over with all kinds of stuff I didn't want. And this guy, like,
Can I hop in for a second? When you say it's been hijacked with things you don't want, can you give me an idea of what you mean? Like, what was going on inside your head that you're just like, I can't handle this?
So I'm going to try not to be too specific here, but the standard things of religious fundamentalism, extreme guilt, mechanisms of punishment and reward, right? Hell and heaven, okay? But not in the abstract sense, right? These guys were doing things like, literally feeling the pain of being on fire as the, to motivate the person. Okay. That's the kind of thing that they were doing. And those things created motivations that were real to the subconscious mind, to the point where certain things, you just could not think them without feeling a lot of pain. You couldn't do things that were triggered by this, or you couldn't do things that would trigger that pain, because the pain would, on the inside, would be too great, right? I don't want to, again, I'm trying to be a little more general, but.
Yeah. Sorry. When you say literally, were they actually physically put, like, when you're talking, I don't know if we're talking pastors.
No. Not like, here's a match, put your hand over it. No, no. More
in influencing your brain to understand that if you're bad, you're going to hell, and going to hell is like being on fire all the time.
Right. And this was things like, week-long summer camps and weekend camps and things like that. You're away from your family and your whole friend group was there. And, it's a lot of, looking back, it was pretty obvious what they were doing. The only thing they didn't do was that they fed us well. Right. If you're really going to try to, I've since then I've studied a ton about cults and programming and things like that. But so the point is this, and teenagers are very impressionable to begin with, right? They don't have the experience to understand worldviews. They don't have the firsthand, hey, when I do this, that happens. And it's all abstract in their minds. They don't really know much. So they take what they've been told as more of a truth. Well, after this guy completely destroyed all the anxiety I had, I was like, hey man, you got to teach me this stuff. And we started reverse engineering all the stuff that the religious group had done to me, right? Figuring out how it worked. And he knew a ton of stuff already, but adding to that with some of this other stuff we reverse engineered over a few years, I was able to get rid of all that stuff out of my head. And we learned just a tremendous amount in the process. So since that time, it took a long time for me to just get to a normal, what I would call a normal life, right? Getting rid of all the stuff that had gone wrong that they had put in my head, and then correcting for that time window of 16 to 25 when I was, on all the medications and my brain wasn't working right anyway, and all that missing time, right? All that missing developmental time. Then we got to correct for that, and then, build up a normal life. And when I got to that point where I was basically, this is, I'm free, I'm pretty clear, I thought, okay, now I'm gonna be normal, right? This is what normal is. Well, I was way off, because when I looked around, I realized that everybody else was just as programmed as I had been, just by going through their normal life. It completely blew my mind. I thought, oh, I was the weird one. I had been programmed and none of these other people had been programmed. That's not true. Everybody's been programmed. Everybody's in their own little, I don't want to use the word cult, but sometimes people will say they're in their own silo or they're in their own bubble.
In their own bubble, yeah. Echo chamber, whatever you
Echo
want to call
chamber,
it.
yeah. Where certain things are accepted as true and they're no longer questioned. And everything just becomes a matter of, well, now what do we do now that this is true? Because I think it's true and all of us agree with it that it's true, don't we? And everybody nods their head yes. And yes, we know this is true. Now what do we do about it? That's the only thing they question at that point. And we see this in the left and on the right. We see this with one religion, another religion, a third religion. You see this with different families. You see this with different countries. You see this with different states in the United States. You see this with city people versus rural people. There's so many situations where this applies. And so I looked around and I was like, oh my goodness, everybody's programmed. Just blew my mind. Well, so I started with family and friends first. I started, hey, I know that that's bothering you. Let me help you out with that. Okay. And started to get some pretty good results. A few years ago, I was on Twitter. I follow Scott Adams. He was the reason I joined Twitter because let me back up even further. When the great orange one came on the scene, right? When Donald Trump first appeared, I was watching a debate and I knew immediately what he was doing. Everybody else was getting upset in the room that I was in. Everybody else was getting upset. Everybody else was, reacting very strongly one way or the other. And I'm just looking at this guy saying these things and I'm like, I know he's doing this and I know he's doing that. And this is the technique he's using here.
So what was he doing?
Oh, he, the first debate I saw, this was the one, there was a famous moment in that debate where, who was it? Megyn Kelly was saying, hey, Donald Trump, you have called women this thing and that thing and this other thing. And it's, all these bad names, it would have ended anyone else's career. And he says, only Rosie O'Donnell. Okay. This was a genius move because it emotionally transferred it. It was incredible. The technical term is reframe. Number one, it was an incredible reframe. He reframed it from everybody, all women are bad, which is what Megyn Kelly wanted him to think, so no one would vote for him. He changed that from all women are bad to this one woman is bad. That one woman happens to be someone that half of the audience already disliked for one reason or another, and was a huge critic of Donald Trump. So in one move, plus it was funny, and it made you, it engaged the human sense of interest in a conflict, interest in a fight, who's going to win, right? Like sportsmen, who's going to win the football game, right? That draws people in, who's going to win this? This is exciting. And he brought that element, all of those into that one moment, and it just annihilated the entire setup that would have ended the career of almost any other politician. And I was there, and I wasn't the only one who noticed this. This is one of the things, one of the first things Scott Adams started talking about. He's like, that was one of this incredible moment. And I had watched this event, and I was at this party and we were watching it, and I tried to explain it to somebody next to me, and he got so upset at me. I couldn't believe how angry he got at me just for trying to explain what was going on. I learned, don't talk about this, right? The people get upset about this. Well, I thought I was just going to be, I was like getting frustrated. I was like, I'm the only one on earth who understands this. I'm going to be like, who was the one in Greek mythology who knew what was going to happen, and told everybody, but nobody believed her?
That's a good question.
Pandora or Cassandra. I get whoever it was. I was like,
Cassandra. I'm pretty sure Cassandra.
yeah. So I was like,
That's that's the one who screams at the top of her lungs, but nobody will believe her.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna be like that. No one else gets this. No one else sees this until I saw Scott Adams say that.
And just to hop in for 1 second, sorry. So the audience knows, in Greek mythology, she was cursed to utter true prophecies, but never to be believed. And Scott Adams, for those who don't know, is the Dilbert cartoonist. I'm sure there's a whole plethora of things you can stick behind that, but I'm going to assume most of my audience knows Dilbert.
Yes. Well, an interesting thing is, and I didn't know this at the time, but when Scott Adams started talking about that stuff, he is actually a trained hypnotist as well. Right. So that was fascinating to me. So,
sorry, I hopped into your thought process. I just wanted to clear up a couple things because I'm sure there's some guests going, who is Scott Adams? And what?
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but carry on. So you're watching Donald Trump do it. Donald Trump did. I mean, you're right. Like, he had the ability. I always called it shock value, right? You're expecting him to be put on his back foot and be like, "Oh, I didn't say that," or what so many politicians did. Instead, he reframes it and gets a chuckle out of half the audience because you're right, Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, even while I'm sitting here, I'm going, "There's nothing against." Like, it's just that's what people view Rosie. You either liked Rosie or you disliked Rosie. And through her career, that changed over and over and over again because at times she was hugely popular and other times not so much. So I understand. Okay, carry on. Donald Trump and seeing this firsthand, being the only guy to see this firsthand.
Right. And the reason I'm mentioning, that I wasn't the only one to notice this. That was like a huge moment for me. So I actually followed Twitter specifically for Scott Adams. And then I started talking about this stuff. Hey, this is what Trump is doing at this tweet, right? And then there's some others too. AOC, she's really good. And her group, they're not as good as she is, but they're pretty good. Matt Gaetz, he's very good at this stuff. So there's a few others, but I started saying, hey, this is what Donald Trump is doing here. This is what this person is saying. And I got someone who sent me a message and he said, hey, do you, help people with stuff? You seem to know a lot about how the brain works. Do you help people with stuff? And I was like, sure. Right. And then it started, right? I started getting more and more, clients, people saying, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And it sort of snowballed from there.
When you say help me with this, help me with that, what is this and what is that? Like, are we talking depression and things like that? Or are we talking something? I don't know what the other thing is.
Yeah, well, a huge number of things, really. At first I was like, yeah, what do you want help with? And people just come to me with all sorts of things. A lot of people needed help with anxiety. That's a big, big thing. So I helped a lot of people with that. Things like, I'm very negative about myself. I'm always, saying negative things in my head and I feel bad, and I can help people with that. I'm not going to go as far as to say the word depression because there's laws about being licensed and saying you can do certain things. And I am not a licensed medical professional. So there's certain words and terms I can't actually use.
Okay, fair.
Right? I am a coach, right?
The coach thing is like, I think, a new revelation of, I don't know, the last decade, maybe less. Like the coach thing, before, I would say people had mentors, and maybe they still do have mentors. But it was never looked at as like or maybe it always was. I don't know. Geez, I can't seem to go back that far. But it was never, to me, looked at like, I'll give you something, you give me some advice. It was always like, I'll tutelage under you and you show me the way quietly. And that was kind of the quiet mentor. And then as people get more interconnected over the planet, coaching has become a giant thing. Like tons of people, like one of the most popular is either a business coach, a life coach, but you put something and coach behind it, and that's out there right now. Like it's a huge thing. It's a popular thing.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of that, again, has to do with these laws, at least in the United States, that I'm talking about.
Okay.
There a lot of this with neuro-linguistic programming and the resurgence of hypnosis came in the 80s with Bandler and Grinder, and then in the 90s and beyond with Tony Robbins. There were people who were getting really, really good results, but there wasn't any credentialing authority. There wasn't any, so there were some legal challenges, and then everything got worked out. And it's like, as long as you call yourself a coach and you don't, portray yourself as a licensed therapist or something like that, you're pretty much okay. So the coaching business gives you a lot more leeway. I know a couple of former PhD therapists who now are just coaches, quote unquote, because they can do more things. They're not bound by, certain associations and certain rules. So I think that's one of the big values and one of the things driving that surge in the number of coaches.
So is it Tony Robbins who sucks you into becoming a hypnotist then? I guess before you answer that question, I assume then Tony Robbins is a hypnotist.
Oh yeah.
I guess I didn't realize. I've watched his documentaries, and I've heard a lot about him, know exactly who he is, but I never pieced together. And maybe it's because I never really cared that much until you mentioned it, that he was a certified hypnotist. Like I didn't realize that.
Well, I don't know if he's certified. Robbins, I don't know if he's certified or not. I know he studied a little bit with John Grinder, but he did a lot of stuff on his own. The terms are going to vary, right? Let me talk about hypnosis in general and the various related disciplines and how they interrelate. Hypnosis started in the ancient world, like way back. Everybody, the shaman would go into trance. You do the drums and the chanting, you go right into a trance, right? There were, the shamans would do the mushrooms. That's an altered state. Okay. Now that's a mechanical or physiological way to do it rather than like a verbal way to induce it. But the general catch-all term is altered states. And you have meditation. Guided meditation is essentially a form of hypnosis. And that's a state where the mind goes into normally quite a relaxed state, and the conscious analytical faculty takes a break. And nothing gets analyzed. Is this true or not? It just gets accepted as if it were true. And then when you bring the person out of the trance, those things are still accepted as if they were true, whether or not they are true. Now that's the term for that is post-hypnotic suggestion. That's the technical terms. When bring them into a trance, give them some idea, they will accept it as true. Bring them out of trance, they still think it's true. Now you can do some things like this. I don't know if you've ever seen a stage hypnotist, one of those guys that does all the really
Absolutely
stuff.
Everybody's been to the hypnotist at a company function or the fair or et cetera, wherever they go.
Yeah, and that's a one example of it. They'll bring everybody up on stage and yeah, you got no clothes on, and they're like, oh no, and they act as if it's true. Now all those guys will do something, and we'll do cleanup, right? So nobody still thinks that after they're done, right? But that's an example of what you can do, right? You can just get the mind to accept something, whether or not it's actually true. Now I'm going to fast forward. There's a guy named Mesmer in the 1800s, Mesmerism. He brought it back. He figured out that he could cure a huge number of health ailments by bringing people into trance and getting them to sort of undergo this cross over this nervous system threshold of intensity, right? Once you get past a certain level of intensity, they would have this kind of moment and release whatever was bugging them. And when they came out of it, a lot of times, not only were like psychological issues cleaned up, but also a lot of health issues. Then William Sargent in Britain, with World War I and World War II vets, he did basically the same thing with barbiturates. Then there's a guy named Milton Erickson, and Erickson was this fascinating guy, one of the just incredibly fascinating guy. He learned hypnosis. He basically taught himself hypnosis, and he did it in a way that no one who came to him was not hypnotized, right? Now, hypnosis works some of the time, but it never worked on me. Like, nobody ever said that about him. Everybody who came to him got their result. They got hypnotized and they got their result. Fast forward even more. In the 70s, late 70s, Richard Bandler and John Grinder was a linguist. Bandler was, I can't remember what he was doing. He was doing some technology related things, and they got together and started studying people like Virginia Satir, who was a very effective therapist, Fritz Perls, another effective therapist, Milton Erickson, Gregory Bateson, and there's a few others, right? And they studied these guys and said, what are they doing that they get these results that no one else is getting? And they had a huge particular focus on Erickson. And what they did is they took all of those specific little things that Erickson did, all those components, and boiled them down to little protocols, tiny little protocols. And then they repackaged them together and called it Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Right? Now, this is where Tony Robbins comes in. He studied with Grinder and then started figuring some of this out on his own. Where it went from there is what is known as, there's conversational hypnosis, meaning, and that's normally what I do with clients these days. I used to like bring people into formal trances, you know, changey, and then bring them back out. Now I do conversational hypnosis where we have a quote unquote normal conversation, but I'm doing things under the hood that are going to change the way you perceive the world, right? That is what a lot of these people do who are in politics, who are in, you know, major influential figures. If you've ever watched the Scott Adams podcast, oh my goodness, it's like front to back conversational hypnosis. He's really good. So that's,
I'm going to be honest.
summary.
I haven't listened to it. I've watched some of his stuff on YouTube for sure, but I've never gone at it from the lens of what you're talking about. So I guess I've never, I don't know. I guess I just had no clue. How's that?
Right.
No clue.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's the rub, right? People think Tony Robbins talks funny, right? They notice that there's something very slightly stilted about the way he talks about things, but they don't catch that they are deliberate, structured techniques designed to get people to think differently. I'll just let that sink in for a minute.
Well, I find it fascinating. I guess I don't know. You just don't look at things that deeply when you watch it. I'm just going to take Tony Robbins, for instance. When you watch his documentary, it's fascinating, right? Like, it is fascinating. And he's such a presence. But that's all I ever took from it. I didn't look at what he's at. You know, I didn't try and take apart what he's doing to see, you know, to put it together, I guess, for myself or for anyone else for that matter. I just watched it and was like entertained, right?
Yeah.
Didn't ever think of anything under the surface more than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's very subtle. If you've ever, here's the thing, Donald Trump was not subtle. His techniques were usually hidden by the outrage he generated. right? It was fascinating for me to observe because he would do things. Maybe I shouldn't use him as an example. Because because people love him or hate him, that's
but in fairness, Donald Trump, love him or hate him, everybody paid attention. Everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. When you say Tony Robbins, I think most people can kind of be like, yeah, I know Tony. Like, yeah, I got a good idea. But you say Donald Trump, everybody's like, I know exactly who you're talking about. I've seen firsthand the things he did. So when you say Rosie O'Donnell, can I remember that exact moment? No, but I can remember moments where I'm watching him going like, this is absolutely insane that a politician is like this.
Mhm.
And everybody can
Yeah.
relate to that.
I'm sorry.
Everyone can relate to it. And like everybody can go back to a moment in the 4 years he was the president and has a moment where they can remember Donald Trump doing whatever Donald Trump did.
Yeah, and it was a very attention getting and attention directing thing. There's this thing he did all the time. He would say something that was mostly correct, but with one very noticeable mistake. Right? He would either at first he would just spell something wrong in a tweet, and then everybody, that's how he started out, and he would get like 10,000 retweets about, look, the president misspelled something, and they would quote the exact message that Donald Trump was trying to get out to the world. He got them all to spread the message by triggering that sense of, oh, I want to correct this guy. Now he did this, he continued to do this for the media, who absolutely hated him. He would do things that he knew would get them angry and want to write about how much wrong it was.
So I'm curious then, he loses the election. Everybody up here, where I am, Canada, goes, if he just would have turned off Twitter, he probably wins the election. Do you think that's wrong or right?
I think the more time went on, the more time his enemies had to learn how to adjust to what he was doing. And at first, he was running circles around them. He was playing them like a set of fiddles. It was, from my perspective, it was almost comical. For most people's perspective, they were supremely angry or very excited. That was, 95% of the world was in those two categories. Those who cared about it. And from my perspective, it was absolutely hilarious because I could see what he was doing. But as time went on, they started to figure out what he was doing and how to counteract it. I think probably the last year before the election, it started, the tide started to turn. He started to get, it started to be more of a negative than a positive for him.
What do you think about currently with current politics and everything that's going on around the world? You're a guy who watches the world leaders. I would assume you watch Biden then and everything else. What do you make of it? If you're seeing the words they use and how they frame things, what do you make of it?
These days, a lot of them learned from what Trump did, but a lot of them are doing it kind of wrong. There's a sense in which the actual facts no longer matter. What matters is the narrative you can get into someone's head. Right? Does that make sense? It used to be, here's what actually happened. And more or less, people sort of agreed that, yes, this is what happened. And then they would try to interpret it. These days, there's like, I'm just going to flat out make up a story that I know is wrong. And I'm going to print it because it's going to trigger a a confirmation bias in people's heads. Oh, I knew Trump was an idiot, right? Oh, hey, if I'll give you a great example of this one. I'll tell you about how it worked against Trump, and then I'll talk about how it's being used today. There was a time when there was some research into injecting ultraviolet light through the blood veins, because ultraviolet light will kill COVID, right? And Trump started talking about that, how, hey, you can put, this ultraviolet light, and it clears out, it disinfects the, COVID from the bloodstream, and people are researching this stuff. And there was something else on the board about using bleach to wipe down surfaces, and, something got confused. Anyway, the idea was Trump said everybody should drink bleach. Complete lie. Complete lie. I checked out all the transcripts for myself. It was a complete lie. However, the narrative had been built up so much, oh, Trump is an idiot, that millions and millions of people believed that the president of the United States on live TV suggested that people drink bleach. Doesn't that blow your mind? I mean,
Well, the most common one that I see play out here is ivermectin. Ivermectin being an animal drug, which it is.
horse dewormer.
Right, which it is. But I mean, you just got to do just this amount of digging to understand that's not exactly only what it does, and that actually it was built for humans, and it just, the thing just rolls out. Except that's not what happens. Now there's commercials built on the radio where they make fun of it with horses and everything else. It's quite wild, actually, to just like take a step back and be like, and this is where we're at. I don't get it. So these narratives, I see them on both sides, and with Donald Trump, for sure, both sides, right? I'm curious, do you have any ideas, or is it impossible to get people out of their narrative? Because I'm in a narrative. You're in a narrative. So many people are in narratives. How do we see past the narrative? Can we?
There's two major ways. One of them is to have a conversion experience. And you see this a lot in the religious sense. People will have their conversion experience in the religious sense. That same mechanism can also happen politically. It happens a lot with feminists. I've seen a lot of feminists who become non-feminist, and they have a similar kind of conversion experience. And that's one, and that's hard to do. That's kind of a challenge. The other way is to, how do you describe this in concise words? If you take their narrative and try to show them that it's not true, that will not work. Right? You ever tried to argue someone out of their position? It does not work.
What do they say?
A man convinced against his will.
His will is still unconvinced.
Is of the same opinion.
Thank
still.
you.
Yeah.
You read my mind. Yes.
Yeah. And so that doesn't work. So the idea is to supply a new narrative, right? You said people are in this one narrative, you can supply a new narrative. This is also difficult, and part of it is because it plays into our need to be in a tribe. We want to be on a team. We want to be on the winning team. Okay. So it's a difficult and thorny problem. There's a saying in science that science advances one funeral at a time, meaning that the scientists who make the great discoveries don't keep moving on. Once they've gotten to a certain point, they keep those ideas. Once they've died, the next generation will take up those new ideas and move forward. And that's some of what is going on. People, after, once people are set in their ways, it's much harder to change them. This is incidentally, or not incidentally, one of the big reasons for the push of what is known as CRT. You guys have that in Canada? You probably have it in Canada.
What is CRT?
Critical race theory.
Oh, okay.
There's been this big push to teach critical race theory in schools, and it's basically intersectionality taught in schools, and they know that if they get the next generation to start thinking that way, it'll be very hard to change it later on, right? They're planting seeds for the next generation. Even Donald Trump, as the president of the United States and immensely skilled in persuasion, he didn't move that many people. I mean, what percent do you think he moved? 5-10% tops?
Tops.
I mean, probably not even that much. So, in a large scale sense, it's very difficult. Now, on a tactical sense, right, you put someone in front of me for an hour or two, and I can change their belief systems pretty well. But it's not scalable in the same way.
When you say change their beliefs, are you saying with facts change their beliefs or with linguistics change their beliefs?
Linguistics. Facts don't work. I know that's like backwards. The idea is that the human brain actually does not engage the analytical faculty until after a decision has been made. The conscious mind basically is a giant prover or justifier. It's backwards from the way most people think.
Well, the big, here.
I know. And then,
that hurts.
Well,
here in Western Canada, right? Like the big push is on. This has been, the last, I don't know, month, let's say, of having doctors on, different people to discuss vaccines, get it, don't get it, whatever. What you're saying is if you're unvaccinated, if you just got the shot, you'd eventually believe it afterwards. You don't need to believe it before you take the shot. Am I thinking that right? Or am I wrong on that thought?
not quite. It's more like once somebody has adopted the belief that the shot is bad or that the shot is good, they're going to filter out things that contradict that. They're going to scan for things that validate that. Right? It's the idea of, once the idea that, oh, Trump is an idiot got into the consciousness of a bunch of people, then someone could come up with a lie like, oh, the president said
he wants you to use bleach, and now they believe everything, and they don't fact check nothing.
Right. So if you are someone who wants to convince someone to take the vaccine or not take the vaccine, right? There's certain things that you're going to want to do. If you want to, I'll go over both sides. I'm an equal opportunity.
Sure.
offender.
Yeah. And I guess I just look at it like I see the two positions, and they are very, like, they don't want to move. And at some point, I don't know what happens, but it feels like society's like pulling against each other or about to smash headlong into each other. And the government is saying you need to be on this side. And there's part of the population going, fuck you. For whatever reason. All of them have different reasons. There's not one reason, because if it was just one reason, you could probably go, this is the reason, and away it go. But that isn't what's happening. So you just stem back and you go like, I don't know how this plays out. So I'm curious. Carry on.
So let's say someone comes on and they're very pro-vaccine and they think everybody should get the vaccine, and they'll say, hey, look, if you have the vaccine, you have an 86% chance of not getting COVID if you get exposed, and you have, if your symptoms are 46% less severe and this, that, and the other. And when we get, 50% of the population who are vaccinated, or whatever percent, I don't know what the actual percentage is.
Yeah. But
then we have herd immunity and everybody's happy and we can, that doesn't work. How many people change their mind based on that?
A few.
a few who are like, yeah, let me really think about this. And they have an iterative process in their mind where their conscious mind and their subconscious mind keep going, in an iterative back and forth process to converge on a good idea, right? That's the ideal, but that rarely happens. What normally happens is people are like, lies, damn lies, and statistics, whatever, your statistics are wrong, or they'll make up whatever. So if you want someone, let's see, I'll start with the side of you want someone to take the vaccine, right? And, I would say it's a little bit hard for me because my personal opinion is that people should choose individually for themselves based on their own medical needs, right? And own their own set of personal responsibility. That's my opinion. So this is a little bit hard for me to take this side of it. But if I wanted somebody to take the vaccine, I would say, I heard this story about this person who didn't take the vaccine, and she was in college and she got COVID and she died. I mean, she was in med school, so we just lost a doctor. Here's a picture. See how pretty she was? And now she's dead because she didn't get the vaccine. Okay. That moves the needle. That is CNN. That is, and we know consciously that it's not statistically valid. That could have been a 1 in a million shot. She might have been the only person under 40 to have died from COVID. Again, I don't know the numbers. I'm making this up completely, but but if you highlight that and make it seem like that's the norm, that's the thing that impresses upon the person's psyche and emotions, it's going to loom so large that it's going to distort everything else out of the way. Okay, and again, go to CNN.com. They have a new story on like that every day. There's this person here who, she got the vaccine, but her father didn't, and her father got COVID and gave it to her, and she died.
And if you go to Fox, you get a completely different side.
Well, I'm going to do the opposite side of this now. If you didn't want people to take the vaccine, you would say, well, this person took the vaccine. He was an Olympic athlete, and he had died of myocarditis a few days later, whatever it is, right? Again, this could be a 1 in a million thing. But if I tell you about an Olympic athlete who died after getting a COVID vaccine, you're going to go, I don't think so. You kidding me? I'm no Olympic athlete. Right? And this is what you see. If you go on to the other side, these are the types of things you see. Oh, this person got the vaccine and they still died. So why even get it? Right? Those are the type of things, those that go after the big three. The big three in the human psyche are survival, reproduction, and for us as social mammals is position in the tribe, position in the herd, position in the hierarchy. And you could even, position in the hierarchy affects reproduction and survival. So you could even say it's just reproduction and survival, but those are the big three. If you go after any of those three, you're going to get an impact. Okay, well, how come you're not wearing a mask? You're endangering me. Survival. Okay. Oh,
could you talk to me about position in the tribe? Can you explain that a little bit more, just for my brain?
yeah, it's a sense of hierarchy, and it's regulated by serotonin. Those who are higher up in the hierarchy of the society feel better, do better, like every metric in their life is better. And this is because human societies have forever been hierarchical. And this is also true for animals. Chimpanzees are that way, dogs are that way. Jordan Peterson makes a big, he had a big, one of his big thing is lobsters. Lobsters are hierarchical. If a lobster loses a territory fight,
it's depression.
It grows a new brain or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's like a severe, reaction to losing a fight. And that's it's a very important thing. So if you can get people to think, hey, you wear a mask, you're a good person. Okay, people like you more because you wear a mask. You're not a harmful person, you're a good person. And if you think about it, isn't that the message? Isn't that the message they're sending to get people to wear masks? Okay. It's that one, and it's survival. You will survive and you will help other people survive.
I'm curious, with the invention of social media and people, I don't know, just whatever that is in society. I'd read something of yours that talked about, Twitter, use it to network and market and learn and find those who can teach you. And I thought that, I'm like, you know what, I should take that thought process more because I struggle with going on social media. Social media is such a dark place at times. Is this something, we talk about these two narratives currently right now. They're very prolific where I live, certainly in the United States. I'm sure it's there as well. Is this something new because of the ability, like the internet, the ability to have multiple narratives pushed on people, right? It isn't just, back in the day, you had the radio and you listened to the radio and you went to work and you carried on with life, right? Now with the internet, the ability to connect with people and see, right now you can see what's going on in Australia. You can understand that Sweden's out of lockdowns. You can understand that the US is kind of in like this hybrid. You can understand here in Canada, we're in, I don't know, whatever we are. We're in an outbreak, right? A state of emergency. Like you can see what's going on in all these different places, which are all these different narratives. And I always think it's like trying to drink water by a fire hose, right? Like it's just so much information. Is the time we live in right now, do you think something new to the human experience, or has this been going on for, I don't know, centuries?
It's been going on ever since the written word, really. But every advance in communications technology has increased the pace, the speed, right? Before it was, everything, before the written word, only it was only verbal. And then you had the written word, and then it was only the priests who knew how to do it. They were the only ones who could spread ideas and culture. And then you had the printing press, and suddenly you could publish books and get them everywhere. And then you had, the next big one was the radio. Now I can send messages to everybody. Then television. Now not only can I send words, I can send images. Then you got the internet. And so with each of these, it gets faster and faster. So the other thing about it is that throughout most of human history, communication was dominated by the elites of society, those people who were generally speaking, the most educated, the most capable, the most, but nowadays, you've got geniuses and mouth breathers on Twitter. And they both, get equal airtime. Right?
Carry the same size of stick, right? Like honestly.
Yeah. And sometimes the people will very much speak outside their area of expertise. Oh, I'm a celebrity, so you should wear a mask. Because you're a good actor, I should wear a mask? Right? I mean, that doesn't make sense. They are not the expert in that field. And yet they have more of a reach. So those are the two big things. You have an incredible increase in the amount, the volume of information going on. Oh, and there's one other thing. The more information coming at someone, the more, the less capable they are of analyzing it. And more of it goes in without being checked to see if it's true or not. one hypnosis technique is overload. If I start telling you 3, 4, 5 different stories at a time, you're going to go right into trance because you won't be able to keep them straight. And you're just going to start accepting the things that I say. And it's the same thing with social media. You get that same effect. It gets into people's heads that way. And then the second thing is, as I said, there's people who don't know what they're talking about still doing a lot of the talking. It's a big challenge. I mean, I take weekends. The only social media I do is Twitter, and I take weekends off of Twitter, and I take Wednesdays off of Twitter. And the 3 best days of my week are Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. I mean, social media is in my opinion, is extremely destructive. There's value there, but it's hard to get at the value without also getting wading through the cesspool of all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I enjoyed about searching your feed. I told you I'm gonna pick through your feed and find some things, and we'll see where the conversation goes. And one of the things I enjoy is, well, see you later, Twitter. It's Wednesday and I'm off. And
some of my most popular posts.
I think a lot of people get that, right? Some of your happiest days currently are as if you just put the phone away. Go, I got 3 young kids. It's better to put the phone away. Go hang out with them and live in real life and see them and deal with them.
Absolutely.
It's compared to wading into some of the conversation that is put online, that I get what you mean. Everybody online has an equal length of stick. And if you are charismatic and can speak well, your stick is a little longer because your voice is heard and gets pushed more and more and more because it makes sense to people. And you find that with a lot of people, right? Like it's interesting to watch the narrative constantly evolving on social media. Every month, every couple weeks, the things change and it's on to the next and on to the next and on to the next. And it's odd to watch. You talk about certain words like being, Jordan Peterson, be precise in your speech. I find certain words really describe today's world, and odd is one, weird is one. Like these words really describe what's happening right in front of our eyes, but it's hard to make sense of.
The word I would use for modern society is imbalanced. Everything is off balance right now. Everything. There's no stable institutions. There's no stable polarities, right? We used to have a situation. Where everybody was like, yeah, I mean, the 2 things are like male and female, right? This goes back so far through all of history, yin and yang, all that stuff. And it was a stable situation where they're, balanced. And everything got way out of balance recently. Okay. Now it's possible, one interpretation is that, hey, the last 10,000 years have been too male balanced, now things are going to be on the female side. Well, I don't quite have a reference for that, but as far as I can tell, a balanced situation is not what seems to be going. The society doesn't seem to be aiming for that balance. If one side was too far, it seems like they're aiming way too far the other side. Okay, that balance is gone. And I keep coming back to that word. There's no ebb and flow. It used to be, you work your 40 hours, you go home for the rest. Now everything's like, well, when at 3 a.m, I'm answering work emails, or because I'm on the phone, and there's no back and forth ebb and flow, on and off anymore. Breathe in, breathe out. It's always on all the time, and it's disconnected and it's imbalanced.
I noticed a really funny thing, and I'd watched The Social Dilemma about social media and just how it tries to get you to interact with it when you stop. And so what I did was I turned off all my notifications, because I'm just like, you know what, I'm done with you. I'm notifications off. And except for 2, I left Twitter and Snapchat. Snapchat, I have family in the States and we have a family chat. And so if they want to see pictures of the kids or vice versa, kind of thing I want to know, right? So then this funny thing started happening on Twitter. It would say I'd have 20 notifications. And when I go on, there'd be no notifications. I'm like this is in like the last 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, screw you. So notifications are gone. I don't even care. Like, I'm just like, whatever. So, and I'd forgotten about Snapchat. And then it started happening on Snapchat. Snapchat says I got notifications. I'm like, what? Who's messaging me? Nobody's messaging me. So now I've just turned them all off. I'm like, it's all off. I don't care. Like, you're not getting me to interact with you when there's nothing there for me to see.
They absolutely have addiction models that they are for engagement. They absolutely do. And one of the best things you can do to get rid of that, there's two things, right? My iPhone, there's a accessibility setting where you can change it from color to grayscale. And you can set it to be, you can't see my phone here, right? You can set it to be the side button. If I click that, it turns black and white.
Right. Okay. I gotcha.
Okay. That is extremely effective. If your kid is stuck on Instagram,
turn it to gray.
Turn it to gray. That will kill that addiction. And one of the reasons is this is actually something, and I'm gonna do some wizardry here, okay? The thing is, if there's something that's bothering you, that in your mind you see it as colored, as brightly colored, as exciting, moving around, as large, or front and center in your face. And let's say this is something that's bothering you, and maybe it's been bothering you for a long time. I don't know how far back you have to go to find something that fits that description, but something that's been bothering you for a long time and distorting your behavior, distorting your feelings. Okay. Everybody's got stuff like that. And when you find something like that and take that representation in your mind and set it to black and white, right? Set that thing to black and white. Not only do the emotions dissipate and maybe drain out of it somewhat, but then you can think more clearly about it. So you're not distorted by the emotional charge of the situation. You have a lot more clarity there. You can see more clearly. And maybe like the sound, sometimes the sound, it's too loud, right? Mute that thing, or at least turn it down so it's not, so invasive. Turn it down to a level where you can manage it better and understand it better. It doesn't overwhelm your senses. And maybe you want to take it and move it into a place that it's not, maybe you want to move it out of the way and put it somewhere that it's going to be more useful. Because when you do those things, you're going to start and notice that your feelings are going to change about it. It's not going to grab you the same way. It's not going to distort you the same way anymore. And you can leave it the same way, you can leave it in the new way as long as that's useful to you. That can be something that can be really helpful to a lot of people. Because sometimes they get this new clarity about the situation and they go, you know what, I don't want to go back. I like it the way it is. And that's totally fine. End of wizardry. Let me say one more thing.
Sure.
One of the best things you can do about social media to get it under control, turn off all notifications. And I'm talking badges, I'm talking sounds, I'm talking banners. Turn all of that off. If you want to look at something, you log in and look at it. You are in charge. You don't want to be that hamster in the cage pushing that button for the pellet every time he hears a ding. Ding, notification. Grab your phone. Who said something about my post? Oh, I got a like, yay. Don't be that person. Turn those notifications off. You choose when you access the social media. It'll make a huge difference.
I think it's really good advice. I got I just go back to The Social Dilemma, right? Them talking about, it's a documentary where they talk about all these different social media and how they try and get you to interact. That's what they're trying to do. You mentioned addictions and using different things like that to cause that. You can see it happening. Like, just, I'm telling you, take your least, try a little experiment just for me to the listener, right? Take all your social media, turn all the notifications off, except for the one you probably access the least, and leave it on and see what happens. You'll see it in real time. Like, the Snapchat thing blew me away. Like, it just kept digging at me like once every, I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe twice a day. Does it matter? And you'd open it up and there'd be nothing there. You're like, what the hell was that? Like, what was that? Right. So now it's just off. And I don't know. You mentioned
you've been clean for, a few weeks. Would you like some heroin?
I certainly do not want any heroin.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's a dopamine hit. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I just I think it's really good. One of the things before I let you go, I'm not sure how much time I got you for. We started a little bit late, and then now I'm looking up at the clock and realizing we've been talking for over an hour. So I got you for a few more minutes, Jason?
Oh yeah.
Okay. You've written, and I can't remember if I stole this off your website or if I got this off of Twitter, but you said the current narrative is not your friend. The classic narrative is your friend. I enjoyed that. Read not as much as I want to, but I read certainly more than I ever have. How's that? And that there's a lot of, I believe there's a lot of knowledge in that sentence. Like, to me, people should think about that and think on what it actually means.
You did do some research. Yeah, that the older I get and the more I clear out the things in my head that are distorting my perceptions, right? Those emotional backlog, right? The more I look at things going on and realize that nobody realizes what's going on. Right? That was a totally complex sentence, but the idea is the clearer I get, the more I realize that so many people are absorbed in temporary fashions, so to speak, that hold their attention. They're not tuned into the things that were true 1,000 years ago, are true now, and will be true for another 1,000 years.
What are some of the truths that you've stumbled upon that have standed the test of time? You don't have to give me all of them, but I'm just curious.
Sure. Things like, I'm not trying to ignite a culture war here, but men and women really are different. Right? I mean, biologically, mentally, in almost every dimension that's possible, men and women are different. Now, there's all kinds of downstream debate on that stuff. I'm not trying to get into that. All I'm just trying to say is men and women are different. I keep coming back to that. Now, I didn't always believe that. I was taught, there's no difference. And the older, and then I got a girlfriend and things were completely different. I'm like, what is this weird thing that I'm talking to who doesn't understand a single thing I say, and I can't understand her at all, but yet she's incredibly fascinating in ways that I don't quite understand yet, right? That was what was going through my head, right? We very much are different. Another thing is that humans are irrational. And for the most part, humans are fairly mechanical. Once you understand how people get persuaded and how they change their mind, and you start to see what is going on, you notice how much of human behavior is driven by subjective narratives. And this has always been true throughout history. I mean, you go back and read Julius Caesar's speeches. The man was just a genius in every area of existence, and his speeches were absolutely incredibly well done. he had a bunch of army, all of his army veterans. They were claiming they wanted a raise after he came back to Rome one time, and they were getting really, riled up. And these are military veterans. They're going to, damage. If they rioted, things would be really, really bad. And so he came up to them, and he walks up to them and gets up front, and he says, "Thank you for your service. You may go." Right. And then they freaked out. Right. Eventually, they turned around this idea, and that they decided they were going to follow Caesar even if they weren't paid at all. And so here was this guy who had his army was basically mutinying, and he turned it around to get a free army. Right? These things have been true. That has been possible since the time of Caesar, since before the time of Caesar. It's possible now, and it will continue to be possible. In fact, it's only going to get worse because of social media and the distribution of this communication channels.
Only gonna get worse. Jeez, you're supposed to give me some uplifting information, Jason. You're supposed to be like,
black pill everyone.
man, like
it will help if you turn your notifications off. That will help.
It's certainly.
I'm absolutely serious about that.
Yeah. Well, I always tell this story. We flew down to the States. In-laws are in Minnesota. So we fly down to the States, and while I'm there, I turn off everything about Canada. I don't have my phone on me, just everything. And when I came back at that time, they had just announced that the pandemic was endemic, that they were going away from everything. But I didn't know this yet because I literally haven't been listening to anything. I haven't been talking to friends, family, nothing. I mean, I'm just in la la land. Come home, I'm talking to a buddy, and he's like, something about quarantine. I'm like, yeah, I got to quarantine for 2 weeks or whatever. The border guy was kind of weird about it though. He's like, if the rules even matter anymore. And I was like, kind of like, well, I don't know what that means. He's like, well, haven't you heard? I'm like, haven't I heard what? And then he tells me, shows me to our officials press conference where they're talking about it being endemic. And I'm like, oh my God, what planet did I just time warp a couple of years, or what the hell happened? I mean, since then it's changed all over again. But that's what turning everything out went to, is like, you just didn't realize what was happening in the world anymore. Like, I mean, I just was enjoying life and came back and found I was in a different time and place, it felt like.
Let me ask you this. Does what you see on social media match what you see when you go outside your door?
No.
When you go outside your door, do things seem pretty much okay?
Yeah.
And yet you look on your phone and the entire world is going to hell by noon tomorrow.
Well, I've been saying this, for sure for the last month. The power of fear is unbelievable to watch. And that's on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll bring it back to the vaccine, because the vaccine, for all the listeners around here, that's the most, the biggest topic right now, right? Is we got emergency rooms overflowing. Everything's emergency. Get the vaccine, save lives, et cetera, et cetera. So the power of the fear on one side to get it is otherwise you're going to die. And you're causing horrendous things for life, right? For all of society. On the other side, there's people saying if you get the vaccine, you're for surely going to die, because haven't you seen all the ill effects of the vaccine and what it does, and it's going to mess with your brain and whatever. And all it is fear on both sides, holding people at bay so that they do what this side thinks is right and what this side thinks is right. And it's just all fear at play. And I stand back. I'm like, this is something else. Like, this is really something else.
It is. Fear is a huge motivator, mostly because it's survival based. Let me do one more thing here. Let's do this. Don't tell me what it is. But if you think of the thing that you are most afraid of on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it? You can do this if you're listening too. It'll work for you too.
I don't know, a 5?
Yeah. Okay, good. Now, there's a lot of people for whom that number is going to be a 10. Okay. 5 is fine. I'm not, that's really good. If your biggest one is a 5. Well, the idea is if you've got something that's bothering you like that, and most of us will try to do something about it. We will mentally try to do something about it. We'll try to change it. We'll try to fix it. We'll try to engage with it and somehow manage it. Okay, so just for a moment, stop doing all that and just let it exist for a minute. Okay, just let it be. Okay, got it?
Got it. Sorry, I'm listening. Yes.
Okay. So then the question is, could you let it go?
Let go of the fear. Let go of what's bothering your brain.
Yeah, like could you do it?
Yeah, I think you can.
Okay. Would you do it?
So then that becomes a question of, for me sitting here, will society let you do it?
Interesting. But would you do it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what all these conversations have let me get to is I'm good. Like I'm good.
Well, so
by
then
getting,
when would you do it?
what do you mean by when would I do it?
When would you let it go?
Well, what it's sitting on my brain is something that society is pushing very, very hard for, which means I want to let it go, but society doesn't want me to let it go. Does that make sense?
It does.
I know I'm speaking cryptically, but
at least on your side of the equation, though.
On my side of the equation, that's why notifications are off. That's why, heck, I'm having you on because I'm curious about how the brain functions, the hypnosis of it. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to talk about some different things.
So the win would be now. Okay. Yeah, because the mind can let go of things, and that's really interesting. Most people don't understand about the brain is one thing most people don't understand about the brain is that all the negative things that are still in your head from long ago you are still hosting those things in some manner, right? It's not just that, oh, they're there, but you are still actively hosting them. And so all you have to do is it's like if you're holding something in your fist and you clench it tight, you just sort of like open your fist and you let it go. Right. And when you do that, you can do that mentally and emotionally and just let it go. And you feel better. Okay.
I've done this with meditation. Like meditation is one of those, I don't know, maybe more than or had more experiences, Jason, than I have, but meditation is one of those experiences that is very spiritual. It's almost like you can feel that immediately. It's not like taking, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like you start drinking more water. People say they feel different. And it's like, well, maybe, I don't know. Like not everybody says that, but most people, if they meditate once, after they come out of that, they're like, and that was good. Like, I liked that. What was that? Right. And to me, the letting go thing that you talk about anxiety. We talked about anxiety right at the start of this. I've done it many a time where I've been extremely nervous for not only a podcast or, I presented to some college kids once upon a time. And I don't know why I was so nervous about that, but I just was. And I meditated before. And it was, well, it's just one of those experiences where you see it firsthand. Everything just faded away. And you're like, oh yeah, why am I nervous about this? Like, I'm not. This is fun. Like, let's go have some fun.
Right.
And
Those,
that's just trying to get the brain to work through some things, or maybe not to work through some things, to let go of some things is probably the way you'd frame it. For me, it's just got to work through some things. These conversations that I do really have benefited me since the start of COVID, because I'm a social being. I know we all are, but I'm kind of like on steroids. I want to talk to people for 12 hours of the day, which a lot of people are like, ugh, don't want that. But you can imagine then when we get locked down and there's nobody around and everybody's like, everybody, they see you coming and they're kind of like distancing, and you can just feel the body language, the energy, and you're like, this sucks.
yeah.
So then I started doing more of this. And the more I do this, the better I feel. It's just as simple as that.
Good. I mean, we didn't talk about, the persuasion of the existence of COVID itself, but the idea that there is an invisible, omnipresent threat. Those three make people crazy. It's everywhere, but you can't see it. So you start seeing it everywhere, right? And the people who are at risk factors or have a more naturally anxious mindset in general, it's going to really bother them. And I think all of us have seen a situation where you're in a coffee shop and your kid coughs and then
Everybody
some person
looks.
picks up their stuff and moves to a farther away table. like, okay, that might be a little extreme of a reaction, right? But it's because that's on their mind, that invisible, omnipresent threat. And so then, when you get outside of that mentality, it stops being, okay, well, it's not everywhere, right? I mean, it's not. There's places where it's just not every human has it, right? So it's not everywhere. And then, it is invisible, but there are symptoms and people can tell, right? And how much of it is a threat if you've been vaccinated and you're wearing a mask? And even if you're a high risk factor, if you're vaccinated and wearing a mask, like, what are your chances really, right? So then the threat level goes way down. And if you address those three things and people start going, you know what, this isn't as scary as I thought, and they start to think more clearly about it, more rationally, more what's the right word, appropriately about it. And that's really what you want. You want people to think that way about it, because people have died from this thing, right? It's not nothing, right? I mean, it's just that you want to address it appropriately, not too much, not too little, but address it appropriately. And the only way to do that is to have a clear head.
I've really enjoyed this chat. It's
Thank you.
Sometimes,
I have too.
Sometimes when I don't know, I call it following your gut, right? You see where it leads you. You have no idea what's coming. And some of the most interesting people I've met doing the podcast have come from exactly that. Just finding somebody. You mentioned using social media for the positive, right? Networking and finding information, etc. Leads me to people like yourself and others that I've had on this podcast, which is enjoyable to hear other people's perspectives and takes and etc. That way. Before I let you go, I for the last little bit, I haven't been doing any of the final segment. It seems like I've been on such a time crunch to get as many questions in as possible. I haven't been doing my Crude Master final question or final five, and it kind of varies. But for you, sir, I'm going to give you one final one. I'll give you a final couple, maybe. The first one I always ask is, I get to sit across from some pretty cool people. The guests get the audience gets to come along for the ride. They get to hear, me interact. If you could sit across from somebody and pick their brain, who would you take?
I would probably actually pick Donald Trump, because he's the most impactful guy of the last, certainly the last 10, 20 years, I think. And I want to know what's in that dude's head, because I could tell what he was doing but I had no idea why he was doing it.
Trump would be a fantastic conversation. Like there's a lot of people on that end that would be interesting to sit across from and get to pick their brain for sure. Do you read a bunch?
Yeah, not as, I mean, you should see the stack on my nightstand. It's like this high of books.
Sure.
And I'm,
What's one book? Listen, I don't know if I'll ever get around to all the suggestions guests give me on books, but what's one of the books that's impacted you?
There is a book called Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. And this book is not outside the box. There is no box when it comes to this book. It is so far beyond any frame of reference. The idea of the book is that there are 7 components of the human psyche that are set after birth, but once they're set, they're very hard to change. They're almost permanent. And he talks about how they affect people and how you can, make changes to those. And it is one of the deepest, most fascinating books I've ever read. It is not light reading, but it's one of the most fascinating books I've ever read. I'll give you one more though. If you're interested or curious about hypnosis, there's a book called Monsters and Magical Sticks. And it's a fantastic intro. It's really enjoyable read. It tells you a bunch of good stuff that you need to know, and it will actually use some hypnosis on you while you read, which is pretty neat too.
Who's the best at using persuasion or words or both in your mind?
I'll give you sort of the top 5-ish. I have to put Trump in that category. He was the messages he was able, the effectiveness of his messaging was just incredible. AOC, she's in the top 5. She is astoundingly good. I suspect she will be president one day unless something derails her. Tony Robbins is good. Tony Robbins is one of the few people who could run for president and beat AOC. Who else? There was a guy, what's his name? Not Joel Osteen. He was a preacher, Robert Schuller. He learned a ton of this stuff back in the 80s. He had a Crystal Cathedral. That guy is astoundingly good. I mean, he knew every word he said was precisely engineered. And let me give you one more. Kanye West, I think.
Kanye West?
I know, right? It doesn't seem right, but he's got several million followers and he's so outside the box, he drives attention. And the things that he says, the way he structures it, is extremely well done. I wrote a blog post once about one of the things he did with his social media to dissolve a huge conflict between people. And he's very good. I might say Scott Adams too. I feel like that guy is behind so many things that we just don't see. I just get the sense when I watch his Coffee with Scott Adams thing.
Here's your final one then. Fake news. What is fake news?
Ooh. There's a sense that all news is fake. I mean, and I literally mean that. I mean, for every headline you read, every article you read is going to be a subset of what actually happened. And it's going to have a narrative imposed on it. So there is a very real sense in which all news is fake to some degree. If you want to not get the fake news, there's only a couple ways to do it. Turn everything off and find out for yourself with your own direct experience what happened, or read both sides. If you read something on the left and read something on the right, and wherever they overlap is probably pretty true.
Well, Jason, I do appreciate you hopping on. This has been a lot of fun, like I said, and appreciate getting to know you and some of your thoughts.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, this was fun.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show, please click subscribe. Then scroll to the bottom and rate and leave a review. I promise it helps. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, we will have a new guest sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast fix. Until next time.